Welcome again, and now it's official, it's recorded, and today we have a great session in front of us, and we have great speakers, and we have and then even greater, or now when I started with great, I now have to go up, 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 up. So Raymond Sanner is going to be our chair for today. Raymond, the floor is yours, and I'm here for any technical things you might need.
Great. Thank you very much, Alexander. Can you see my slides?
Yes. Yeah, with the sidebar. There you go.
All right. Okay, so hello to everybody. It's a great pleasure to be together on such an important topic, which for us, most of us, except Alexander, who just said it, he's not yet at the stage of being emeritus. From a just age point of view, this is a very relevant topic for me and for most of us, and I think also for the audiences. Before I start with a first short introductory part, a few additional information. Each speaker has 15 minutes to present and also 10 minutes for questions and answers. The audience which likes to ask questions to the speaker, please write your question in short and precise wording and put it into the chat so we can read what you have sent. Then there will be also an open-ended question and answer sessions at the end of the webinar where you could take it more, talk more at length. And you already heard from Alexander, this session is going to be recorded, and hence you can revisit it, the slides in case we were too fast and you couldn't see everything. So it should be easy to do both, listen to us, and also have a view at the slides at a later stage. So here are the presenters that will go with me. I say a bit more before they start, but we got the first one after me is Dr. RWelke. He is Regents Professor Emeritus, Computer Information Systems on Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia, USA. Then we have another colleague from the USA, Dr. Jerry Katz. He's professor at the Brockhaus Endowed Chair of Entrepreneurship, Department of Management in St. Louis University, St. Louis, Missouri of the United States. And we also got Dr. Peter Fong, who's the president of the Hong Kong Public Administration Association, editor, publisher, and has also long years of teaching experience in different universities in Hong Kong, but also has been to the USA. So we cover North America, through me, Europe, and also through Peter, Asia. So as a start, we have the few points I'd like to share with you. As we all know, in the developed part of the world, life expectations has extended. And we are more or less now talking in most of our countries on the average of being able to reach 80 to 83 years of age. On the other hand, retirement remains at the same years as we have already for several generations, which is 60 or 65. So that leaves about 20 years where most retirees are still in good health and are eager to do some meaningful work, and I'll say a bit about this shortly. So some retirees have to work because unfortunately their pension fund is not sufficient to live a decent work. Others who have enough through the pension funds enjoy retirement and do things which they couldn't do while being in the daily working rhythm. And now they travel and do cultural events and also take care of their families and grandchildren. But a growing number also wants to continue to do meaningful jobs. The surveys we have done in Switzerland, for instance, show an increase of people who retired, but would like to be still active, and not necessarily to do, again, the same rhythm of work from 9 to 5 or 6, but to do some meaningful work, and we'll be able to talk about that shortly as well. Now, just to talk about the labor market, I thought it would be useful to have a little bit of a comparison here about salaries. You see, for instance, the our age, or being part of the boomers, it goes from the top and is now dropping down, as you see here, where us as a group are meeting the youngest generation, called the Generation Z. They're rapidly going up in terms of the salaries they can get from the labor market. So we are on a descending scale for average jobs, and the young are competing in that sense with us. There's an intergenerational competition. You see this again here over the age. The axis here, horizontal axis, were around 70 to 80. And again here, I highlighted where the boomers are. And on the left, you see the young generation Z, the millennials, the Generation X. They're in that sense starting to outperform the boomers. Now, which is in a way natural because of their young age and energy and coming into the labor market. But of course, it also means for the average retired person who would like to go back to the labor market, there is competition. Now, us being academics or former academics, emeriti professors, this is a different story because we have accumulated knowledge and skills. So we're not competing for average jobs. We're competing for jobs where we have a specific track record. So in European countries, there is what we call in French, there is the guillotine. You know, the French Revolution, and you get your head chopped off. In most of the public universities, 60 or 65 is the maximum, and then people get to be retired. In the US, it's a different story, and we hear this from our two colleagues who will speak after me. But the opportunities for retired academics in Western Europe is of interest, and many of them, as I mentioned already, would like to continue to do meaningful work. Now, meaningful work, as an academic, there are opportunities. You all know, right? Several of us are adjunct professors, or we are visiting lecturers. We teach part-time. We do research. We're part of research teams. We author. We are peer reviews, public speakers. There are things we can do in the role of an academic emeritus, which for some are just punctual activities, but in some cases it could be also prolonged and be a sort of semi-permanent activity. There are also non-academic opportunities for emeriti professors. A lot of companies are now, again, short of skilled labor and are looking for help, and are in that sense also recruiting people who have already retired because they have skills that are missing in our industry, in our economy, in several industries. So there are opportunities also to consult the government advice in terms of policy making. There's joint research. There are opportunities that are not necessarily purely academic, but are to some extent close to it. I would like to close my presentation just to emphasize one particular form of retired person who might be doing meaningful work, the so-called silver economy, where people have accumulated good financial resources, did a good career, and are eager to share what they have been able to learn, and including their own resources, knowledge, as well as financial resources with young startup companies. So basically, these are people who have a purpose-driven motivation beyond their retirement. They could also be called, silver angels. But in contrast to the business angels, it's not just about money. There are, of course, some people who retired and are eager to get wealthier and make money. But quite a lot of the silver angels are interested in helping the next generation to come on board and to join society. Some have also a social purpose to help the civil society organizations grow and become sustainable. So basically, that's all I wanted to say. I come to the end. There are references, but the references are just for your information. You can later on look it up. And I'm saying thank you. And I pass on to our next speaker. Actually, no, I'm sorry. If there are people who would like to ask questions about the presentation I just made, you're welcome to ask a few questions within the 10-minute limit. If there are questions. So far, I don't see any. Richard, that means you're on. Go ahead.
Okay, let's see how this works in real time. All right, so hold on. All right, Dewey's. I'm not sure what you're seeing on your screen.
Nothing yet.
Not yet.
Okay, hold on. Move this somewhere else.
Now it's coming.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yep.
know. Okay, so now I have to. All right. So look okay?
Yeah, if you have two screens, and you probably have two screens, then you have to
Okay.
share the different screen.
Yeah, I'm going to swap screens. All right.
Great.
Good to go? All right. So much fun. Okay, so, well, Richard Welke. The thing I love about being in Europe when I was professor there was the wonderful titles you get to put in front of your name. So here in the US, you just say Richard Welke, maybe you add comma PhD, but there, everything you've ever done in your life somehow precedes your name. So there it is in its full glory. So the things I would like to emphasize are roles you can play as an entrepreneur in some fashion. So obviously there's the pure entrepreneurial role, which is start or co-start a company, and I've done that in red because the next couple of slides will show you where I've been and what role principally I played in it. A second is entrepreneurial, and that means that you actually embed yourself inside of a company and then use that as a kind of framework for getting them to become more entrepreneurial, i.e. introduce new products, change modes of behavior, and so forth. And then the third role you can play is what I will call encourage and support, which is that you're not essentially embedded in the organization, or you don't own the company, but you help other people do it. So sort of along the lines of what Raymond was saying with the Silver Angel. But you can do this vis-a-vis a university. You can do this, as he said, as an angel investor or silver investor or silver angel, or you can do it as a mentor, which is probably the best role you can play that doesn't necessarily result in the remuneration. So this is my life history in a nutshell. And so I've been a co-op student essentially from about 1962 to essentially when I quit, which means I kept moving between academia and the real world, if you will. And so I took roles in the real world to learn how the real world works and bring knowledge that you get from academia. And then I reversed that and went back to academia and brought lessons learned from the real world back to academia. So a few of these things that are more entrepreneurial nature is my first foray was creating a company that imported microcomputers into Canada. I was a Canadian then, and so I was the distributor for something called the Dynabyte computer, which is CP/M-based operating system. And then I created on a sabbatical Methods Works, and that was because I was affiliated with the ISTOS project, which was the principal software engineering project in the United States, run by Dan Tycro. And so I became the quote unquote distributor, if you will, for the PSL, PSA software. And then I had the opportunity to buy the company. So I reformed it from ISTOS to Metasystems. Then when I went to transitioned out of the Netherlands to Georgia State University, I took up the role of an interim CIO at Law, which was one of the larger engineering firms in Atlanta, $2 or $3 billion a year. Then I started the GEM program, which Jose is quite familiar with. And then I took another role as CIO of Russell. And in each of those, I did different roles, which I'm going to go through in a moment. At Georgia State University, business school became the J. Mac Robinson College of Business around 2000. And so I did some sabbaticals, et cetera, but mostly I created the Center for Process Innovation, and then ultimately the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute at Georgia State. And then I got involved with a friend of mine from the Netherlands who had just started Park Mobile in the United States. And so I became the CIO for that. And then post-retirement, which began in 2019, I became a mentor for a company called EcoBuds. EcoBuds is essentially helping marijuana growers create, shall we say, biologically viable outcomes. And then just recently, I started a new company called MedTranslate. So what takeaways from all these things? So I'm going to just focus on a few. So Methods Works, okay, that was my first real company, which I started on a sabbatical. The two things you learn at the beginning is you need revenue. And so where do you get revenue from if you don't have venture capital funding? And so you just have to network a lot. And so networking was really key to getting the first 2 or 3 companies to work with me. The second was because I was selling or attempting to sell some software, ISTOS really was a university research project, so they weren't that concerned with reality. They just wanted to advance the state of the art. So we came up with a whole bunch of complementary products based upon the feedback that we were getting from our customers. So we created something called reverse engineering using Prolog, which was an early AI tool. We created something called View Integration System to allow people to transition from what at that time was ISAM and flat file systems into a kind of ER model that could then be implemented using relational database systems and a number of other things. Okay, then Metasystems, which is the one that I purchased, it was when you acquire a company that starts as a university research project, you find out that marketing is not top of the line. So again, sales became an issue. And so I'll just give you one little takeaway from this. I bet that the more knowledgeable the salesperson were, the better they would be as salespeople. That was totally wrong. The people who least understand your product are the people who are most successful at selling. And the reason for that is the people who are knowledgeable they keep trying to solve the customer's problem and therefore keep coming back and saying, we need this change to the software, we need that change to the software, something else. And so they never close the deal. They just keep asking for more changes. Whereas the less knowledgeable people, they just know how to sell. So anyhow, it was a bet I made with my marketing officer, and I lost big time. And also another issue tends to be in most of these companies is intellectual property ownership. And when you're working out from a university, that becomes a big, big issue because the university claims IP ownership. And so you have to, in effect, pay them something for the use of that ownership. So how do you move from that arrangement where you're losing roughly 50% of your income to what's called a non-derivative work? So that was another major issue. A third issue is product development. And if you just delegate this, I lost about $1 million just delegating it and relying on people who I thought were competent. No, you've got to be day-to-day on top of them. Okay, so Park Mobile. This was a Dutch company that came out of the Netherlands, actually out of Amsterdam, and they sold, well, they had a software subscription model where people were paying them on a monthly basis in order to be able to park in and around Amsterdam. And a friend of mine, El Bogard, brought that whole thing, including its software, over to the United States. The misalignment of that was incredible. They were using voice response protocol to talk to a phone in order to say where they wanted to park. So they had no business model, no business plan. So it's very, very difficult to align anything with anything, because if you have no business model or so plant, then you have no way of helping them in a coherent fashion. You have no way of communicating what you're trying to do with what they have in their mind. So getting a business plan and a business model was important. The other thing that you find in these startup companies is, of course, revenue. So sales always trumped any other things that you tried to do, particularly in the IT area. So I'll give you one example. They were selling into a major city in the United States, but in the US, you have these issues of ADA, Americans with Disability Act. So they insisted that what the software be able to work with people who were blind. And you might well ask the question, well, what blind person drives a car so that they need to park? Didn't matter. If you didn't comply with that, they wouldn't close the contract. So it cost us probably $500,000 to put in enough software improvements to enable a blind person to actually park the car and make the parking commitment.
Sorry, Richard, you have 3 more minutes.
Okay, so anyhow, meta systems methods works. Oh, sorry, going the wrong way. EcoBuds. So this is where I was a mentor, and so in the mentor role, everything. Here the issues were if you don't ask for some kind of remuneration, folks generally don't listen to you. They listen to the persons who they're actually paying. So if you're in a mentorship role, find some way in which they have some financial responsibility for you. So let me just skip. So your possible value adds, as I see it, okay, is one, people need subject experts. They start companies in all manner of topics, but they don't actually understand the area well enough to evolve it and explain it. Okay, secondly, CEOs is a very lonely proposition for an entrepreneur. So providing them with essentially psychological, emotional support is a really, really important thing that you can find interactions with. Most of the entrepreneurs I've come across do not understand basic accounting and finance. And so they're perpetually in a cash flow crisis. So anything you can contribute on that is desperately needed. All right, why would you do this? Okay, you find extremely passionate individuals trying to solve common problems. You can help them clarify value propositions, and you can learn a whole bunch of new skills. So you might say, well, I've never done this before. The only way you're going to learn it, it's just like, is jump in. Don't let that be your point of resistance. Communicating with startups, I insist that everybody learn two things, the value proposition model and the business campus model. And these both come from Yves Panur and Alex Osterwalder. And you can pick up the templates and all of the information you need for free from strategizer.com. So how do you embed? Go find a university program or club, volunteer as a mentor, act as a judge in pitch competitions. They're all over the place, running all the time. Register as an angel investor. So that's it. I think I've gotten my 15 minutes in, right?
Yeah, but you haven't yet said anything about the conclusions.
Well, okay, so there are many roles you can play. I've just briefly enumerated them. Each of them is a unique value, and each one has issues to be addressed, and you can add maturity. Okay, one thing many entrepreneurs lack is maturity. And so being able to stand back, reflect, and contribute to them is really, really important. So you're essentially a life coach for an entrepreneur. And as I said, start slow. I mean, there's a desperate need out there for the kinds of capabilities that you folks have. And you just need to connect. Once you connect, you will find these things. So, is that all right, Ray?
Oh, sure. Okay, Richard. Thanks a lot. I have two comments that came in through the chat. In fact, they're not directly questions to you, what you presented, but maybe we have enough time. So let me start with the first one by Roland Bardi. His career was with business, with the multinational companies. And he is saying that for him, there's another way as well, not only from academe to become a businessman or entrepreneur, but it also can be the reverse, where a business person moves into academe. And he has a name for that, but that's his major comment. And I think maybe since you have been going back and forth, you can relate to that shift of role from academia to business, to academia to business. So that's his comment. And we have another one by Doug. He noticed over the years that different management styles, that his management style with manufacturing company was different than with academe when he was an academic in an academic leadership style. So the question there is about the research institute that he is now directing. What are your suggestions and thoughts in this regard? Richard, you have time. You have about 8 minutes to respond to both of them.
Okay. All right. So academic transitions. Okay. Academia, real back. Well, first of all, it's easier to do the transition if you accept the role of an adjunct professor. Okay. An adjunct professor does not demand research in any significant way, i.e., top journal publications, etc. Transitioning to a not adjunct, but actually a regular full professor means that you have to constantly keep you active in the academic field, even though you're working in the real world. And so that places a double demand on you. So for example, I was the program chair for ISIS in 1985, even though I was running Methods Works out of Burlington, Ontario. So, so you have to keep in contact with all the relevant academics. You have to keep up with the field. You have to publish, just so that you create an opportunity to reinsert yourself back into academia. That's less required for sure if for an adjunct. They're just simply looking for people to teach in particular topics, and in fact, with more relevancy perhaps than pure academics could bring to selected topics. And I think that's especially true in entrepreneurship because it's really hard to find top journals in entrepreneurship that at least U.S. universities are prepared to accept. So, you have to essentially publish in the management journals as opposed to the entrepreneurship journals. As far as style, no, I mean, I suppose that's true for some people. I've always had the same style. It never changed between going in, starting companies, working with companies, or going into academia. I always saw them as basically the same thing. So the main deal for me was, okay, you have to essentially be self-effacing. In other words, you can take credit for nothing. And you have to put all of the joy and glory on the people that you are employing, whether it's assistant and associate professors or whatever. So when I started things like GEM and E-commerce Institute and Entrepreneurship Institute, I didn't do it by myself. I gave all the credit to everybody else. And the same thing held true in the companies that I ran or I belonged to. So, and that's a style that worked unilaterally across the entire scheme.
Mm-hmm.
No, I appreciate that.
I got a third question, and we have just 3 minutes left. Doug, do you have a comment to make about what Richard just said?
No, I appreciate that. Actually, that's interesting, and I'm going to kind of reflect on that. Frankly, I'm also the honorary chair for ICIS in Bangkok this year, and the word being honorary is great, frankly, because you have massive degrees of freedom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and selective responsibility where you get to select.
Exactly. So thank you. Appreciate the comments.
Okay, just briefly, Licha is putting a question to you, Richard. How to build the trust of the junior persons towards you as the mentor?
Interesting. Okay. Well, first of all, if you're going to come in, okay, you have to get a sort of sense of what, some of the main issues are. And then you have to pick one or two of those. It's the low-hanging fruit concept. So you pick one or two of those things and you fix it ASAP. You show them that you can accomplish things that matter to them. Okay. And then the second thing is that if they if they do something, okay, that you don't try to claim credit for it. Okay, so, and that happens a lot in academia. I mean, people just, they put their names on the papers even though they contributed nothing to them, simply because they can. They're the chair or whatever of the department. And that breaks trust. And so you, like I said, you just have to be self-effacing. But I mean, when I came to the Georgia State University CIS department, I'll have to say, frankly, it was a mess. I mean, we had secretaries screaming at each other in the hallways. The faculty didn't come in. The PhD students were suing the department because they weren't getting the information, the things that they were promised. And so you have to fix all that. And you have to do it really, really fast. And if you do it, then they start to trust you for more significant things and are willing to allow you to act on their behalf. Mm-hmm. So then things get really nasty. You need that trust. So you got to build it fast and then keep building it. I mean, I also I created events. So there's this concept called create an event, and that's true. So every month I would create an event. We'd have a party at my house, or we'd go out or something and socialize. And so, you just have to create events and make everybody, feel part of the action.
Richard, thank you very much. Great stories that you've been sharing with us. And there were still also other comments in the chat from Roland. Maybe we can get back to that when we have the open question and answer part. Thank you, Richard. Now we move on to Jerry. Jerry, it's time for you to upload.
I'll start by unmuting and let's get this going. Come on.
All right, there you go. Well, just very briefly, Jerry is Professor Jerome Katz. He has been with academe for quite some time. I know him for, 30 years. He's very well known in the entrepreneurial academic field and has been playing very important roles in the American Academy of Management, and accumulated a lot of knowledge, of course, through his own research and his work with entrepreneurs in the US, but also internationally. So without much further ado, Jerry, take over.
All right. I want to thank you all for being here, and I'd be glad to answer questions. So put them up in the chat, and if not, you'll have my email. It's jerome.katz@slu.edu, and I am always glad to answer questions. Okay, so I've got 4 things I want to do in kind of quick fashion. One is to take a moment and talk about the exceptionalism of retirement in the USA. I want to talk a little bit about the legacy of the ideas we've created as academics. I want to talk a little bit about protecting the legacy that we've created through the service we give to our professions. And because Raymond had said, we want examples. Give us interesting examples. I have several friends from here who I've noticed are great at pursuing lifetime loves, and I will talk to them. So, by the way, if the last part blows, doesn't work well, please blame Raymond for this.
Thank you very much. Very kind.
Well, now you know how we've survived together for 30 years. We blame each other. So, because I think the strangest thing about American academia is the government got rid of mandatory retirement. Professors in America are not required to retire ever. And it was done in 1967. It was nailed down for sure in 1994. So a professor can keep teaching just as long as they want to. But the fact is that an awful lot of professors in the US do want to make some other kind of arrangement. And sometimes what they do is they voluntarily retire. Sometimes they'll just walk away and enjoy their savings. Sometimes they will try and arrange a phased retirement or arrange to be bought out even, getting a lump sum to leave rather than hang around and aggravate the dean. There are people who I call boomerangs. They leave, realize, oh, I'm missing something, and they come back to academia, usually as an adjunct. The whole idea of emeritus in America is basically the organization giving you an additional appointment as you retire. Very often it involves giving you access to office space, perhaps teaching or advising or being on committees, perhaps not. It's highly variable. But that's what kind of drives how things happen here in America. And if there are any questions about that, I'm glad to answer it. I want to take a moment and talk to y'all about ideal legacies. And even if you are now a emeritus, it's important for you to think about this. We are in the midst of an explosion of new websites that seek to list academic publications. I'm going to go through and show you the tremendous range in the next couple of minutes. And one of the things is, even if you are an emeritus, you may want to get into these and take control of your the legacy of the work that you've done all these years. So some people, the obvious way, if we're talking about entrepreneurial ways to do this, the entrepreneurial way to do this is to create your own website. And if you do that, it's great. The thing is that if you create it, you also have to curate it and keep it up and make sure it's running and that people can access it. Rita McGrath is a professor at Columbia. She's a very, very famous author and consultant. She actually was a doctoral student at Wharton as I was leaving. I had left Wharton, but was still on friendly terms with them when I came to St. Louis University. And so I continued on dissertations and helping out occasionally. So Rita and I crossed paths when she was a doctoral student at Wharton. But this is her website, and it is it's absolutely professional grade. She even has a blog where she's posting stuff, typically once to twice a week, as a way to keep people coming back. This is her basis for managing her legacy and being able to talk about not just her research, but the things that she thinks are important. So really cool idea. The American professor you are most likely to hear of right now is Ethan Mollick, who is a current Wharton professor and is really one of the faculty who is on the leading, even bleeding edge of AI in academia and in the larger world. And his website is called One Useful Thing. But again, it's an efforts for Ethan to control and get ahead of the fame he has in terms of the work he's done and trying to make it accessible and available to people elsewhere. So let me start talking about what, if you're not going to create your own site, but you want to be aware of and make use of the existing sites. Obviously, the starting point, I think, these days has to be Google Scholar. Because it's free, it's probably the best known site, and it is the most widely available. There are sites like academia.edu, which is a freemium site. It means you can create a free account, and if you pay money, you can have a fancier, an account with more options. What's interesting is academia.edu makes it possible for you to post articles, and they have arrangements with most of the publishers so that articles published by the author on their site can be shared with people who are interested. ResearchGate.net is another similar sort of freemium site with much of the same kind of arrangement. Academia makes it possible for people to download articles themselves. ResearchGate typically has you as the academic who owns the paper. you have to actually email someone the paper. So depending on the kind of work you're doing or how much time you want to put into this, one might make more sense than the other. The other one that I think is super important to know is called ORCID, or CID.org. And this is, ORCID gives every academic a identifying number. And the thing is that all of the other sites I'm going to talk about depend on that ORCID number as a way to make sure we're talking about the same person. It's a free site, and it is one of the most used sites. Certainly it's used by all the commercial sites, so it's something to take a look at. Many of you have probably heard of William Baumol, a American economist who was active in the area of entrepreneurship later in his life, and actually wrote some of the foundational papers about this. He passed in let me see, 2017. This is his page on Google Scholar. And Google Scholar automatically finds papers, looks for downloadable copies, and makes it available so that you can see, you can literally put in any academic's name and see what they've published. Faculty can actually claim a page on Google Scholar. This was claimed by Baumol before he passed. And you can, when you do that, it will connect you to your university's page. If you have a personal homepage, it'll connect to that. And it organizes all of your work in one convenient place. So you can see your publication statistics on the right. So, you know, he had published 1,126 items, 750 of them have citations. He didn't do an academia.edu, but in deference to our European participants today, I thought I would look up Bengt Johansson, a Swedish entrepreneurship professor and founder of the journal Entrepreneurship and Regional Development. And this is what his page on academia.edu looks like. Baumol has one on ResearchGate, and what his looks like. And again, for both of these, you see that it lists the papers that they have, or at least some of the papers, and some of the statistics for their publications. Bengt Johansson's ORCID page is here, and you can see the ORCID number below his name. That's the key number because everyone else uses that to know you are who you say you are. This is a page that I was talking earlier about complicating your life. This is the page that will complicate your life. This is a mix of both free sites like SSRN and Semantic Scholar and commercial sites like Scopus, Dimension, and Web of Science. And probably if your university is standardizing on some commercial academic listing, it'll probably be Scopus or Web of Science or Dimensions. All three of them are very active and are marketing at a furious pace. So we've got that going on. Look at these sites and decide if you want to create a page. From many of them, creating a page is free, but you may also think you need to double check what you're trying to get done. For all of these sites, look for older papers because very often your older papers are now open sourced somewhere. And there are places like ourresearch.org that help you find those free versions of papers. There's also another site called WorldCat, or Worldwide Catalog.org, which does a wonderful job of tracking things like technical papers, working papers, and the like. Just so you know, how well do these work to catch all the different papers you've written? You can see the numbers here. Google Scholar had 123, Academia 142. WorldCat had 1,415 things I had my name on over the years. So the range of things is amazing. All right. Service legacy. So if we've talked about trying to protect your writing, your intellectual legacy, one of the things I want to take a moment for is say, if you are watching this and you are at that point where you are a senior professor, not quite an emeritus, one of the things I want you to take a moment and think about is how can you help your successors step up? And when we're talking about journal reviewers, many of you here have been on multiple journals. How do they replace you? Well, if you have younger people who you would like to give a leg up, if you tell the editor, I'm planning to retire, I need to step down, but here's someone I would recommend to take my place, the editor will adore you, and you could be making an enormous difference in the speed with which a junior professor moves up through the ranks. I actually had founded a journal called an annual volume, Advances in Entrepreneurship from Emergence and Growth. And I used the same idea there, as I felt I was aging out and didn't want to worry about the day in, day out level of exposure to the field that would make this volume work. I literally arranged to have my co-editor become the lead editor. And that's Andrew Corbett here, who's a professor at Babson. But again, starting that conversation with your publisher gives you control over what's going on, but also helps secure the legacy that you want to see for the organizations you have. All right, these last couple minutes. Mike, I'm at a small Jesuit university here in St. Louis. And one of the things about that is the people who come to Jesuit universities tend to have an orientation towards service. This is the guy who is my best friend for much of my academic career here in St. Louis, Scott Safransky. He was an Eagle Scout as a youth, and he's had a lifelong love of scouting. He is now even in retirement, actually about 6 years into retirement. He is now one of the national youth leadership trainers for the Boy Scouts of America, and is basically given himself over to scouting. There are 5 members of his children and grandchildren are scouts, so he gets to put on the outfit and march with them. That's what he does for fun. This is a finance professor, Neil Seitz, who actually was even my dean, and I still like the guy. That's accomplishing something. I'll say this, but I wouldn't write it. He has Parkinson's, but his mind is as sharp as ever. And so what he has done in his later retirement is he's maintained a business creating simulations, financial simulations for universities. And he does that through, basically he's doing it behind the scenes, but is able to remain active and involved and still giving back. Many of you might know Mike Morris. He is at Notre Dame. He keeps finding places that'll hire him so he doesn't have to retire. But his thing has been, in his late career, he focused on giving back through promoting entrepreneurship in the poorest countries, starting with the poorest towns in South Africa, and now here in America, and has the Global Partnership for Poverty and Entrepreneurship. Again, giving back. It was mentioned, I have the Brockhaus chair. This is Bob Brockhaus, after whom the chair is named. And he basically has been retired now for about 12 years. But he and his wife, Joyce here, still continue to consult to family businesses. And they do that. She's a doctoral level counseling psychologist. And they continue to do that today, actually having families come to their resorts homes in Colorado or Florida for advising. And when I was young, I was a policy wonk. I was pursuing degrees in political science and psychology with a specialization in urban studies. And I got asked to help a national network of professors who provide consulting work to the U.S. congressional committees. The committees are the folks that actually create the laws that Congress votes on. So here is me and another professor in front of a representative from Texas. We had just finished a fun session helping her and her committee staffers create a new policy proposal, literally a proposal for a law related to small business. So the fact is that one of the things a lot of us do is go back to those things that we loved as younger people and have a second chance at them. That's everything I've got. I think 2 minutes over. I talked as fast as I could. I would be glad to answer any questions now or in the future.
All right, Jerry, thank you very much. I saw a comment in the chat by Richard. He was mentioning one other site or one other tool that could be used, and I'm a member of that group too, the ResearchGate. I think
Yeah.
you just didn't put it on your chart, but
No,
that's true. It's yeah.
It's under academia.edu, and you'll see I actually had I can't remember, but no, it is there. You go
Okay.
back. It's Baumol's ResearchGate page I also showed.
So
it's there.
academia and ResearchGate are together.
No, competitors.
Competitors, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So it's good to have, it's good to feed both of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I said, academia will let you put your, both of them let you post your papers. Academia will let people download them. ResearchGate typically has them ask you for the paper and you have to send it to them.
Okay.
So, depends how much you want. I actually like getting, a request saying someone's requested a full text of something. It's an ego feed. We take them where we can get them.
Okay. Just a question. I don't see any other questions at the moment in the chat or comments. We're talking about academia, emeritus professors, but Roland was also talking about the reverse, taking the bridge from the business side over to academe.
Yeah.
I know from my own experience, it's more difficult for people who haven't done years in academe to be accepted for by publishers. How easy or how difficult is it for people who have a background in business to enter the whole publication field? That's the first question. The second one is also a bit related to that. When it comes to the non-American realities, I remember from my own editing work, it's quite tough to get people who don't have English as a mother tongue, and on top of it, not knowing how the politics work in terms of publishing. What could you say could be helped or could be done to help them to also participate in both academe, ResearchGate, and the others?
Okay. Well, participating on those lists, that's you're just posting that in English. So if you get someone to help you match that up or polish that works. Okay, I have a really strange answer though to the first question about publishing for non-academics. I have, if you Google eWeb, EWEB journal list, you will see a list I maintain on my personal website, and it has 158 English language journals, referee journals in entrepreneurship. There are roughly 10,000 academics in entrepreneurship worldwide, according to Google Scholar, which is the most complete listing. If you stop and think about the fact that most of those, the editorial board for a journal is typically about 30 to 50 people. So there are 5,000 of the 10,000 are covered as members of editorial boards. And if they're, the fact is that there is so much focus of the major academics on the top tier journals that a lot of these less famous, smaller journals are desperate to publish. I would love to publish papers. If you're running a journal that's based in Malaysia and you have a brand name American or EU professor who's willing to publish a paper, or even just someone an American adjunct academic who would say, former vice president or president or founder of such and such company, all of that sounds good. So one thing is to go for the less prestigious journals on that list of 150 journals.
Yeah.
Another is to start thinking about op-ed pieces. and practitioner pieces and practitioner outlets, because then, like the Academy of Management Executives, a very famous one, Harvard Business Review, but there are multiple business reviews, and a entrepreneur or manager who is now in an academic setting is in a perfect position to write and place those, and those count for the American AACSB for the accreditation standards. Those count. If you're in a business practitioner journal, those kind of articles count. So, and that actually counts in a different way, because those kind of articles are going to be read by other managers, which will make your dean happy and make your development officers happy, because we'll start sending our research papers to donors is going to put them to sleep, possibly give them a brain aneurysm. Sending something practical they could use and say, oh, now I know why they kept the business school around all these years. So those are ways I would play that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Jerry. I think when we get to the open question and answer part, more people will also come back to your presentation and to our discussion. Let me go on and invite Peter Fong to join us, a speaker from the other side of the globe. Dr. Peter Fong, Jerry was talking about publications. Well, he is very busy as a publisher, being also the editor-in-chief of a journal called Public Administration and Policy. You see the first page here listed. But I know also Peter from quite a few years back. He was also a professor. He was teaching at Hong Kong University. He has done some of his academic life in the US, Boston, in New York, also the UK. So he brings with him a rich also background of both experience in different countries, working with business, and remaining also, despite his young age, still a very much active academic. Peter, you have the floor.
Thank you, Raymond. It's my pleasure to join you this group. So go back to the first page. I'm not a pure academic. Okay, I worked in government for 15 years, and I worked for business for several years, and I also work in the U.S., New York and Boston. So actually, academia, I work in many universities, and I also work in the UK. So I'm a mixed, a practitioner actually from a long time. I'm in many universities, but actually I practice all those policies, management, whatever. So I'm not pure academic. The other point I want to mention, so far, Raymond, I'm at your age, okay? So not young, and I've never retire. Okay, I never retire. I move from one university to another. I think that's the practice of some of the academia in Hong Kong. So I share the experience, and I will highlight some of them, okay, later on. So actually, my first point, very important, is keep the mind and body healthy, okay? Because age is only an indication. Actually, physical and mental health is very important, because I work in government in New York City in the government as a mental health worker, and also work in Hong Kong, the social welfare department, or also social work. So I know, the body and mind is very important, and that's why I keep myself healthy all these years by practicing just like the network, right? What we talk, okay? I practice. I'm still playing. I have been playing basketball for 50 years. I play badminton and still playing badminton 3 times a week, okay? So that's why I still can do a lot of things. So that's the preamble. Okay, so let's go into my slides. Okay. Can you move on, Alexander? Yes. So how can you contribute to the community? Your work, your university, your neighborhood. The most important thing that you have to live in a balanced living, very balanced. And this is what I learned from Harvard Business School. Robert Kaplan, David Norton, they developed the balance scorecard and strategy map. So actually, I'm not in business school, but I learned, and then I practice them, and then I modify them, convert them into life. So the balance scorecard, everybody know, financial, customer, internal process, start growing them. So I modify them into life, and then change it into definitely financial. I think you had some financial means to support you, what you're doing. The second is health. That before was customer, and then your family and social. So this is the base. You have a balance. If some of them, if you ignore them, then you won't have a balanced life. Then you won't be happy. Ultimately, you will be happy. So that's the basis. Next, please, Alexandra. Okay, so how to keep my body and my mind healthy? Okay, I don't know, maybe I apply to others. Okay, I always maintain a balanced diet. I'm not a vegetarian, but I eat a lot of vegetables and fish, and then do exercise regularly. I just play last night 3 hours badminton, and tomorrow another 3 hours. So regularly, not one off. My belief is that disease prevention is better than cure. I just had my body checked last month. Everything is normal. Cholesterol, blood pressure, everything is normal. So no worry. And I always have a positive attitude. So nothing is impossible. I don't get mad. I don't get upset. No. Because I look at the positive side. Okay, I don't expect things. So that's why I never get upset. So a very important mental attitude is positive. So everything for me is positive. If something not that good, I just forget it. Okay, so good health reduce financial burden. I think very rare people will say, hey, you need your health insurance. I don't believe in that. So I haven't had any financial coverage in the past 20 years. Okay, so I invest in myself. I save money when I need to go to the hospital or whatever. But where I never, very rare get sick, just some flu or cold. Okay, so keep a high moral standard and integrity and ethical. This is very important. Then people will like to work with you and will respect you. So all things will be easier. Join professional business social associations. I'm the president of Hong Kong Public Administration. I have so many other associations, big friends in different sectors. So I'm really multidisciplinary. I work in University of Hong Kong for 20 years in 5 faculties. Start with architecture because I'm an urban planner. I got my master from NYU urban planning. And then I'm in the social science because my PhD is public policy from NYU. And then I moved to the continuing education training. And then I go back to the faculty education, higher education. When my last post in the University of Hong Kong is the business school. I start up a new program. Later I will mention it, the EMBA program at Hong Kong U Business School. So multidisciplinary, know more, I learn more. So make friends with different sectors, engage in NGO, social and community activities. Next piece. So that's the basis for my keeping my mind and health, mind and body healthy. So for those who are not familiar with the Hong Kong situation, Hong Kong have a small place, okay, is Hong Kong Special Administration under China, okay? So we have about less than 20 tertiary education institutes. Most of them are here, okay? Some mostly public and some private, some mostly very famous. Next page, please. I will give you some the latest ranking. Sorry that I cannot put the update one. So the City University of Hong Kong, the ranking is 62 in the world. QS just released the ranking. The top one is the last one. The University of Hong Kong ranked 17 in the world. I was so surprised. It's better than NYU and Columbia, and higher than Yale. Okay, the Chinese U, actually I graduated from Chinese U, is ranked 36. So these are the 8 government-funded universities. Of course, everybody wants to get into this, students and academia, because they have a lot of resources. The government fund 80 to 90% of their expenses. Okay, so these are the top universities in Hong Kong. So depends on students, right? You have intakes. The best student, you choose the top one, and then you all the ranking you go down. So this is the situation. Hong Kong University. Next, please. Okay, higher education, similar to Raymond, you mentioned about, and also the US, because I spent 10 years in US, 7 years in New York, 3 years in Boston, working in the Massachusetts state government, and then working at MIT. So very, very like, the university in Hong Kong, first we start with the British style, because before 1997, Hong Kong was a British colony. So we adopt the British UK system. And then later on, we follow the American system. That's why before, the University of Hong Kong, all the faculty members, most of them are British from the UK with degrees. But I was the minority, actually very minority. I get my degree from the US. So entering into Hong Kong U is very rare. So now it's a mix. Hong Kong's university system, they mix with the UK, US, and now also mainland China. So this is the system. So very similar, from 60 to 70. Some of the high-ranking universities, they were very strict. If you are not in full professor or chair professorship, then you might have to retire at 60. So some of the self-finance or less lower-ranking university, they are more flexible, and that's why they can attract the renowned professors from the top-ranking universities into their university. Next, please. So you have a choice. If you choose not to work, one you mentioned, so some of them are like that. Some of my colleagues at the University of Hong Kong, they like that. Hey, they retire, they don't want to make any commitment, just relax, okay? Do some of the thing there. But for those who want to continue to do some work for financial return or no return, then it's a different story. Next, please. So for those who want to continue, I think it's such like the US, American, they're changing a little bit now, and then the Hong Kong followed that. Some of the university professors in like Hong Kong U, wow, they are not the top, but they are good. So but they are asked to retire at 60. So they move to another university. They offer the higher position, like full professor or chair professor. So this is how the academia move from one to the other. Next, please. So I give you some examples. So Joseph Lee is formerly the vice president of University of Hong Kong. He's an engineer, and then moved to Macau, become the president of the Macau City U. And then one of my colleagues at the geography department, Jim Yong, he's a very famous tree expert. So he had to retire. So he moved to the Education University in Hong Kong. And then some of the other geographer, because I also study geography. So he moved from Hong U to Hong BU, and then Peter Zhang, public admin to EDU. Andy Zhang, some of you know that he was also a minister, and he formerly started with the CTU, public administration, and now later become the president of the Education University of Hong Kong. And then Simon Ho from Macau U, come Hong Kong to Macau and come back. And then my colleague Hong Yu, I think similar to some of the professors in the US, okay, you retire from full professor, become an honorary professor, like adjunct professor, teach 1 or 2 courses. The last one is similar, you know, from professor to adjunct. Next, please. Okay, so I actually practice entrepreneurship. Okay, because I always start something new, and I always learning. This is the principle. I always learn something new, and then I practice what I learn. So the first thing, you know, and I saw opportunities. When I left the government, I was in Hong Kong and trained the senior officials for 10 years. So after that, I returned to Hong Kong to start the executive education, training the senior civil servants, because the public sector reform, they don't do in-house, they outsource. So I went back to Hong Kong to start up a center to train to be their partner. So train the senior civil servant, actually a similar job. One is in-house, the other is outsourced, okay? Privatization, outsourcing, like that, okay? So, and also I see China is developed rapidly in the 2000. So they start, so I saw there's opportunity. They need a lot of training for their senior officials and business. So I started a China Development Center. And then I set up in Macau also, I was a executive vice president of CTU of Macau. So we have a lot of MBAs. So I started up the new doctor management for my MBA students. And then I mentioned earlier, Hong Kong U, they don't have, I think 15 years old, they don't have the executive EMBA. So they asked me to start up. So I said it was too late because they are so behind. Northwestern, Kellogg, and Hong Kong USC, the EMBA always ran top 3. So at that time, the top 1, 2, 3 is about Columbia and London U, London Basle. So I partnered with them to form the eMBA Global Asia, London U, Columbia U, and Hong Kong U. So after 7 years, it became #1 in the world. Okay, so also start the other executive leadership program for Oxford and Cambridge. So these are all new. In Hong Kong and in mainland China, I start something. Okay, next please. Okay, so yes, I have my own company, Peter Fong Associates, a business. My company has been in operation for 20 years. And then now currently I still teaching part-time adjunct professor and advising about 12 PhD DBA student dissertation. And I've been teaching a course called Strategic Change, Strategic Management. So I also teach master in other universities and bachelor. So also provide some training. I think the piece, as one more mentioned, the most busy thing is that I'm the editor-in-chief of this journal. We grow in the past 6 years. We have submission for about less than 20 per year. Now it's over 140. So it's a lot of work. And then the ranking is from 0. Now it's in Q2 in some of the areas. And a lot of downloads and a lot of citations. The impact factor is 2.5. So we start from 0, scratch. Now is not reaching the middle range. Okay, so this is a thing. And corporate training, I do a lot of company training. And I think recently I just joined another academic think tank. Dr. Feng asked me to be the dean of the business academy. So I've been doing a lot of things. Next, please. Okay, so continue to serve that. So I think the latest also involve Raymond Nietzsche, the ICSC International Chamber of Sustainable Development, is founded by two of my DBA students. They set up this chamber, and then I became the advisor and people consider. So last month they launched a global launch, median launch, and then set up with the help of Raymond and Nietzsche. We have the Geneva chapter, and they already set the London chapter. And then next month will be a Singapore chapter, and I help them to also develop another expansion to China, the Greater Bay Area. So I also do other things professionally. Also, I think the all useful things that I was a former World Bank consultant, and also sit in some of the bank. One of my students is the chairman of the bank, Delta Asia Bank. So he invited me to be one of the board director members and then consultant. So these are some of the things that actually practical experience in the business, in government. So I'm still a professional time planner and a transport and logistic professional. Next, please. I think that's it. This is my journal. Ramon and Lisa, you have a special issue later this year. Okay, so we rely on you. We are processing, reviewing the papers. There should be sufficient number of papers to publish a special issue on aging, Europe and the world. Okay, so thank you. That's my presentation. Oh, the last one more, the last page. So that's it. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Peter. I'm taken by all the things you have. Pressure to publish or perish, or even perish before they even publish. Your example of big worlds, going to business, being in academia, doing research and publishing, how common is this? Is this growing, that you have people in Asia that are more able to move from one world to the other in terms of also professional roles? Okay. Or is it changing?
Very good question. One of the purpose of my I started this journal 6 years with Emerald, published in the UK. So one of my purpose to help these young academics. And before was PhD students and academics. But at that time, the first 4 years, nobody from mainland university submit papers. So because, like you say, the ranking of the journal counts. Okay, the citation of this. So I haven't reached that. So there's no submission, because it's very practical, very realistic. If they publish a paper in my journal, but they don't get any credit. Now I'm moving up to the upper middle rank. A lot of paper coming from mainland young scholars. That answer your question. Okay. Sure. They are hiring global. Okay. I just got say, oh, a young lady just graduated from, of course, bachelor Peking University, master UC Berkeley, and then PhD Washington, back to Peking University as an assistant professor. Okay.
How about people from business coming over to academia? Is this increasing, or it's still the same?
So there are two streams. I have two streams, okay? One is DBA, the other is PhD, okay? PhD, if you want to go to academia, you need a PhD, okay? Particularly to the top universities. Because when I started the EMBA, teaching EMBA, you definitely need to get PhD from the world's top universities.
Mm-hmm.
You are not on that. You don't think about it, okay? Yes, the people. Just one of my friend, he has been working in the banking financial industry, HSBC, Deutsche Bank for 10 years. He asked me advice. How can I move from business financial industry to academia? He's very successful. Okay, get a PhD from Hong Kong U in law, business and law. And then I help him to become associate editor of my journal, and then become a supervisor of the DBA student education.
Okay.
Associate professor.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is from academia. If you want to be academia, definitely get PhD. But there are some of the business they want to change. Yeah, they need to also get a PhD. DBA they can only teach at the second tier. Okay, top tier no way. Okay, so that's the norm in Hong Kong.
Okay, thanks, Peter. Let me see in the chat if there's anything new that came in from Richard. In the US, he says there's an emerging executive PhD program that brings business professionals into the academe. In that sense, he is making a comment about the question I put to you, Peter. But Richard, maybe can you say more about that, what you just wrote into the chat?
Yeah, we established one here. Lars Mathiasen, Detmar Straub, Lars Mathiasen, and a couple of others. But there's now a consortium, and they span all of the U.S. So top schools, middle tier schools, whatever, okay? And what they do, we take in about roughly 25 to 30 students each year. It might be 40 now. And they go through a fairly rigorous process. They have to learn, the skills of the trade, if you will, from an academic perspective. So they have to learn qualitative and quantitative research techniques and methods. They have to produce a dissertation. And they now created there's a journal now, which essentially is dedicated to publishing a version, you could say, of their dissertations just to get them into the publication stream. They don't tend not to be accepted as a regular professor at the top tier schools for sure, but at the next tier down, and as you know, the U.S. has lots of universities with lots of business schools, and so consequently they are indeed accepted as assistant or associate professors into these schools, and so they bring the skills necessary to do publication, and they also bring with them, of course, anywhere from 10 to 40 years of business experience. So it's a highly, there's a lot of business people who have been very successful financially, and now they just want to get out of the rat race and go into universities and impart knowledge is kind of their typical mindset.
Thanks. Yeah.
I can add something to that. Okay, I've been teaching the DBA program for 7 years. Okay, so all kinds of senior professional business executive. So now, in Hong Kong, it's a big business. Almost all the major universities have DBA. The top two is the Hong Kong U and also the University of Science and Technology. The tuition, I don't know how much is tuition in the US. The tuition at Hong Kong U is over 200,000 US dollars. Okay, for the 4-year program. So about maybe 50,000 tuition. Okay, like other business school. So it's a big business. They admit how many students? 100 students per intake a year. So it's a lot of money. So it's cash cow. Okay, so you can say that every university business school, they have this EMBA. When I started the EMBA with Columbia and London U, it's 150,000 US dollars tuition. So it's very, very expensive. So I think, yes, for those who don't want to go for a PhD and want to teach, in the UK, yes, much easier way to get a doctorate is DBA, not PhD. So University of Wales which I'm teaching, a lot of young students, they do their DBA and then go into academia. It's much easier than getting a PhD. So this is two tracks. One is already successful business, and then they want to have a doctorate, and then they do the DBA. The others, yes, they want a quicker, easier way to go into the academia. They get a DBA. Okay.
Well, let me remind you that Harvard gives a DBA. If you get a PhD, quote unquote PhD from Harvard, you don't get a PhD, you get a DBA. So DBA is not necessarily an indicator in the US that came from an executive PhD program. There are plenty of University of Kentucky, and I could go on, give DBAs. So it's not a differentiator here.
Okay, yeah, I think maybe a different system. The Hong Kong system is combining, merging US and UK. Okay, so that's why you get something useful and then put into the system. Because I know the free system, Hong Kong system, which I grew up, and then the US, I got my master and PhD, and then work with Cambridge, Oxford, London U, and I also visit Professor Tsinghua and others. So I know the four system. So they are merging. Okay. Before it's very different.
There is a fusion happening. a meltdown of the academia.
Yeah. I think this is they are not something in common. I think they adopt each other. Just like before the UK system, they only one professor in the department, right? But now they change. Hong Kong U also, only one chair professor. Now is everybody's called professor. Using the American way, right? Assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor, right? So this is a system changing now.
Yeah.
I have a question or a request from Li Jia to Richard. Richard, do you see it in the chat? She's asking for the link of the program that you mentioned before in your previous intervention.
The link to what? I'm sorry.
Li Jia? You're muted.
I'm not muted.
No, Li Jia is muted.
Sorry, I saw that you mentioned about the DBA, executive DBA in the US, and you're talking about recruiting students for 100 and develop essential sort of a PhD level skills. So I was just wondering whether there's a link. I would be very interested to see the definition of these essential skills, because I think more and more discussion is taking place saying that PhD students need to learn more versatile and more sort of and transversal type of skills in order to face different situations.
Okay. Well, yeah, link. I can, if you go to robinson.gsu.edu, they list all their programs, and one of the programs they will list is the executive doctorate.
Okay.
And there they outline the curriculum. If you want more details, I can easily ping, currently it's Lars Mathiesen and Arun Rai, and they can send that to me,
Okay.
and I can forward it to you. So just
Yeah.
send me an email.
I will do so. Thank you very much.
I'd like to give the floor to Jerry. You wrote a lengthy comment in the chat. I think this is in a way almost strategic for those who are not working and not living in the US about the whole issue about language publishing. Jerry, could you summarize what you have written?
Sure. My travels overseas, where I've gone to all sorts of schools, and I was not the first American or native English speaker to be a visiting professor. So I imagine almost any college, any university has had people come to teach or present who who are basically native English speakers. Think of those people as having a connection to your university. If you write to them, they probably have fond memories of when they were at your campus. So write to them and say, I'm trying to create a paper. I want to publish it in an English language journal. I could really benefit from having an American or English speaking editor look it over. Do you know someone? And the fact is, most of us who are still in our home universities have know of people in the English department or graduate students in the English department who very often will do side gigs as editors. They usually work cheap. Some of them, particularly younger people, like those working on their doctorates, being able to say they copy edited for professor in another country sounds cool. So for all of these are ways to go about getting connected to an English language editor that might have some reason to feel favorable toward you. I also included the Google search. If you Google editing services for non-English speakers, there are all sorts of commercial organizations that will gladly do that for you. Then at those kind of times, buyer beware. But that's what I was thinking of.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Rev. Jerry, Richard, and Peter, I have a question to the three of you. So far, we talked about, and we had great case examples about academe and business. What, for me, is missing is whether or not you have examples of people from academe going into the social system, the not-for-profit system, or people from this stakeholder group of the civil society wanting to go into academe to also acquire a title or academic degree, and maybe go back and apply what they have learned by being in an academic setting. What about this back and forth between academe and civil society? Do you have experience with that?
Well, okay, so going back to the thing, I'm in this Jesuit school. And so historically, religious-based institutions, at least in the US, have had people, have had links to civil society, to religious society, to service organizations. In fact, we existed to train teachers for Catholic schools. So there's a long history in Catholic and other religious-based American institutions of having a focus on civil society, social society. We actually, when we teach entrepreneurship here, we talk about CSI entrepreneurship, corporate, social, and independent. And we have students who come in and we have two versions of for undergraduates, there are two versions of the introductory course. One for people who want to do a for-profit business, and a social entrepreneurship introductory course for people who want to start social ventures or nonprofits. And then they do that for the graduate students. It's either either traditional entrepreneurship, which could be social or for-profit, and then the alternative course for the graduate students is corporate entrepreneurship and innovation. So, but to give you some idea about how that works, so we have a lot of people going back and forth.
Right.
There's a history of it, and but you look at places like Indiana University or Harvard, and they have very, very active social entrepreneurship programs.
Are these two courses of the same duration?
Yeah,
Or
they're
short?
purely. We teach one semester. We teach the for-profit introductory course, the general course, and the other semester we teach the social entrepreneurship course. And there's the undergraduate major is a 3-course sequence, and the second and third courses are designed to accommodate students. The second course is managing resources, so it's financial accounting, legal, and HR, and they are ready to handle students with any of the 3 kinds of businesses.
Great. Richard, what about your experience in this regard?
Okay, so first of all, personally, I don't see a huge difference between. There are a lot of companies that start up intending to be profitable and are not profitable. So for all intent and practical purposes, they're a nonprofit. The issues are nearly identical. It's just a question of where does the funding come from? Is it an NGO? Is it, where do you think the source, is it charitable contributions? What? I mean, if you go to the AACSP or, the animal controls, you pick it. I live in a charitable community here. And yeah, they're not for profit, but they have identically the same issues, okay, as a for-profit. So I don't really see the conflict there. In our case, when I set up the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Institute, we set up a core of 5 courses. And then we allowed, because it's an institute, it's interdisciplinary by definition. And so we have social entrepreneurship, so the social policy faculty, they add their own specific context against those courses. We have another one in bioengineering, and so they add their particular context to it. We have, of course, the one in the business school, which adds, more of a business flavor to it. And, so there's a set of core principles that you need to understand whether you're going to be an entrepreneur, an entrepreneur for, not profit or not profit. And then the question is simply, what's the additional information that gives you an edge if you want to go more towards the social sphere or more towards the for-profit business sphere or more towards a specific discipline such as bioengineering?
Yeah.
So like I said, I find the lines very fuzzy and gray.
Okay, I understand that, but what does it mean in terms of the curriculum? Is it the same curriculum for both?
The core is the same. Right? Jerry just said he has a three core course. Core. We have a 5-course core. But that's how much can the university tolerate? How much can your, shall we say, other faculties tolerate in terms of having, courses sucked out of their curriculum in order to plug this in? But this allows for a lot more interesting interactions because all of these students from all of these faculties are taking these core courses. So they're interacting amongst themselves from these totally different background disciplines.
Excellent.
Actually, there's an easier way to think about this, Raymond. There are textbooks in entrepreneurship. There are also textbooks in social entrepreneurship. Are also textbooks in technological entrepreneurship. And there are textbooks in corporate entrepreneurship. And if you look at those, what you see is that there's a fair amount of commonality.
Yeah.
And but then you also get to quickly within that commonality, you can quickly see where the differences are, how they're approaching things, where they're changing the emphases. But you can use that as a way to do it. By the way, the other kind of textbook I didn't mention is a textbook in small business. And the funny thing is that small business has most of the content of the entrepreneurship, different kinds of entrepreneurship books, but the small business books also have content on managing operations that is a weak point in the traditional entrepreneurship books. So asset management, inventory, risk,
yeah,
things like that.
the nuts and bolts. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay. Yeah. Peter, how is it in Hong Kong?
Yeah,
Richard, you wanted to respond just before.
I just wanted to make one small remark about the previous thing about English and, you know, how does a non-native English speaker do something with a paper so that it can make it into an English journal.
Right.
And there is perplexity.ai is great. I mean, it takes pretty bad English papers and it has a very, what they call long context window. So you can drop in, 50, 100,000 words into this thing and it will clean it up, but it will also, the unique thing about perplexity.ai is it actually gives you references and they're reliable references. So if you want to try doing something, AI is really unbelievably good. So you should really start trying to use that for doing that kind of work. You can always, the whole point of submitting it to a journal is that people are still going to, kick it around and change the words and change themes and whatever, and you get feedback then. But if you want to make it through that first stage, Perplexity is a very, very good AI for that.
Well, that would be very useful for these thousands of non-US or non-British, meaning non-English language authors to find a way to get in.
You can even say, in the style of, you can give it an example of the style that you want.
So the style of Shakespeare, you mean?
Yeah, well, you could do that. Yes. I mean, seriously. But one of the big things about publishing is you want to be in the style of other papers that have been published in that journal.
Yeah.
And so you can feed it examples and say, here's the style I would like you to write this paper in.
But this is not for free. I think it's paying, no?
Well, there's you can pay $20 a month for the pro version, or you can, under so many submissions, you get it for free.
Oh, okay, great. Thanks.
Okay, may I add something?
Peter, what's the situation in Hong Kong?
Yeah, there are people come interchange, from academia to non-government NGO to business and government. Some good example. The dean of the Hong Kong New Medical School, he quit and become an executive director of Hong Kong Jockey Club because the Jockey Club pays much higher.
Yeah.
And also, I mentioned to you, Professor Anthony Cheung. He is in and out. He was academia and then he become a minister, the government, and then moved to another university, become president. So there are a lot of things. So also Polytechnic University of Hong Kong, a medical doctor. He gave up his practice and become an academic. Health. Okay. So you might have met him in some of the conference. So there are people changing, disciplines. And I myself, I was teaching urban planning at Hong U, and then I quit and went to Hong government to train the senior official for 10 years. So after 10 years, I go back to university. So it's a lot of changes. If somebody want, the reason is that I don't want to be a pure academic. So I want some real world and govern everything. That's why I work in 3 sectors. Academia, university, many. Government, I work in Hong government, Chinese government and U.S. government. So, and then also in big business, the banks. I work with some of the banks. So I think there are people, but this is not too many, I would say, because it's a very, very, very different kind of requirement. So if you are in the academia, you focus on publish, okay? Publish or perish. But if you go into another sector, there's no requirement. You won't do that. So it's not that easy to change back, okay? So that's my comment.
Yeah,
the last thing about AI, I think definitely everybody is using AI, including my students, myself, okay? Our journal also they have guidelines, so you have to acknowledge if your paper is aided by AI, so you have to declare. So they are getting more and more, but I think ChatGPT is very useful, okay? So this technology, we have to learn and use them for writing and publishing.
Okay. Roland, are you still there?
I think he left.
He left now. Okay. Yeah, because he is an excellent example of somebody coming in from a business and then teaching and publishing. We did a book with him together 2 years ago on public goods. And we were stunned by the knowledge that he has accumulated or maybe even had before being a high-ranking businessman in a German multinational company. Now, we have a few more minutes left. Is there any question that anybody wants to ask anybody else? That doesn't seem the case. So then I hand over to Luigi. Luigi, could you please come in and inform everybody else what the next steps are?
Thank you very much for this very, very useful and also, I think, a very deep discussion that was here. And what we have seen today is that the variability of our activities after retirement are so many that we can write a book. And this is my proposal, to have a meeting on September 25 or next September at 5 p.m. Concerning an endless book, experience and experiments of emeriti and retired. That is what we have seen today, exactly. Only expanding it to other colleagues, to other universities, to other countries, I hope also. And so my invitation is to have all of you with us on the next September, and to arrive to write a sort of book of our experience that can be useful, especially in the case where emeriti and retired are not so active or permitted to be active.
Oh, that's an important point you just raised at the end, where they're not permitted or not encouraged to be active. Yeah. So how many pages will this book then have? You said endless.
Yeah. So we maybe we can find somebody that is able to edit it. It should be very interesting. Anyway, we go on this line, that is the line of today, and the title is expressing exactly this, because it said an endless book.
Okay.
Experiences and experiments by emeriti and retired.
All right. And you will send out a reminder or some...
Yes, I'll send you a reminder twice before September.
Okay. Thank you. Joshe, maybe you also want to say something as we are closing?
2 points. One relates to technology. What a delight to have Zoom, that we were able to come together for 2 hours, wonderful hours. Something what we were not able to dream about just 2 or 3 years ago. Second, what a delight to listen to so experienced, smart, open people as we were able to listen today. Wonderful. And at no cost. And
We just lost you, but then we heard a bell.
wonderful. I would like to express thanks to the chair, bringing 4 presenters together and running the show up to the minute, asking good questions, opening discussion, and creating an atmosphere that we need. Finally, I would just like to say something about what was said are not allowed. We are meeting so many people who express how unhappy they are because they are so disconnected. They were thrown out of university because they retired. They were sort of sent to the cemetery. And here see what can happen. Endless book, Luigi.
Hai detto che noi abbiamo fatto il lavoro a metà.
I saw, thank you very much, Joshe. I saw Licia had her hand up. Licia, just a couple of minutes maximum.
No, just a very quick comment following up on what Luigi and Jose just said. I think, one of the things that, it's underlining is really our own perception about aging and what is sort of the ideal senior life. And of course, one of the things which affects everybody is this conscious or subconscious or unconscious ageism. And I think, a endless book of allowing each individuals to reflect their, I'm not saying the final journey, but sort of after a long service journey and go into a space that maybe offers more options to choose, could be a very interesting exercise and to shed light in terms of how we define senior life.
Well, thank you, Licia. This is a good point to stop. So I say thank you to all the speakers, to Joshe, Alexander, who left already. We haven't worked together as a group, but it worked out all right. So I think it's promising, good experience for more to come. I don't know how endless is endless, Luigi, but I know that you don't meant eternity, but let's do some endlessness together. And I wish all of you good continuity in the work you do. Wonderful to be in touch with you and see you another time in the near future. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Raymond. Bye-bye.